Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome back to the live studios here in Radha Lane. And this is a special, special day. It is Janmashtami, the appearance day of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, of whom... Is it that it's not working, the air conditioning? It doesn't seem like it's working.
Hot in here.
It's very hot. It's not working.
Oh, I thought it turned it on.
I think so. No, I don't. I think it's not working.
Should I disturb him one more time and see if we can turn it down? Or not worry about it?
Don't worry about it. Just turn the fan up and hold your breath. Okay, it's Janmashtami here in Sri Sri Radha Nila Madhava Dham, and we just finished the Krishna Fest at the same time. And Indradumna Maharaj is here, Govinda Maharaj is here, and Badahari, and Bhakti Sundar Maharaj is here, and it's party time. And the kirtans are just out of this world, and there's a bunch of ecstatic devotees jumping around and being in ecstasy. So it seems fitting that we do our reading today for the pleasure of the Lord for his birthday. He is the Srimad-Bhagavatam, as we'll hear again just now. And we're just starting the second chapter of the second canto. Some of these chapters were the first publications that Prabhupada put out, when he came to the West. After the publication that he brought with him, the first publications that he printed in America, among them were these chapters, the first 2-3 chapters of the second canto of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. Okay. We hope you're all having a very happy Janmashtami.
I don't know what that means.
Maybe you should. Maybe you should come. Maybe you should come, Siri, and find out. What do you think? Okay. It's my prarabdha karma. I can't help it. It's just like the whole thing's a setup. Okay. Yeah, right. We're gonna convert Siri on Janmashtami here in Houston. Okay. Okay. All glories to Srila Sanatana Goswami. All glories to Srimad Bhagavata Mahima Stotran. All glories to the Srimad Bhagavatam. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas. A new regular has come. Rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabho Kalidwandoditaditya Shri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshakshadayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Sri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguru Madmahadana Mannishtadaga Madbhagya Madanandana Mostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu sadhu tadayin atini chutatakara hanamunchagadachin mam premnarit kantayospura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. All right, we've reached the second canto, second chapter. As I was saying to the devotees before we plugged in, these chapters are so important that Srila Prabhupada, when he started publishing, material, before he did books, one of the first things he did was he published these chapters in little sequels, So they're very important basis of Krishna consciousness. Now we're reading the chapter called the Lord in the Heart. Canto 2 is called the Cosmic Manifestation, and this chapter 2, is called the Lord in the Heart. Text 1. You remember in the first chapter, he described the universal form and how to see the different parts of universal form as parts of the transcendental body of the Lord, and in this way condition the mind or help the mind begin to think in terms of a person, or God in terms of a person. That's Brahman realization. Shukadev Goswami said, formerly, prior to the manifestation of the cosmos, Lord Brahma, by meditating on the Virat Rupa, regained his lost consciousness by appeasing the Lord. Thus he was able to rebuild the creation as it was before. Purport. The example cited herein of Sri Brahmaji is one of forgetfulness. Brahmaji is the incarnation of one of the mundane attributes of the Lord. Being the incarnation of the passion mode of material nature, he is empowered by the Lord to generate the beautiful material manifestation. Yet due to his being one of the numerous living entities, he is apt to forget the art of his creative energy. This forgetfulness of a living being, beginning from Brahma down to the lowest insignificant ant, is a tendency which can be counteracted by meditation on the Virat Rupa of the Lord. This chance is available in the human form of life. And if a human being follows the instruction of Srimad-Bhagavatam and begins to meditate upon the Virat Rupa, then revival of his pure consciousness and counteraction of the tendency to forget his eternal relationship with the Lord can follow simultaneously. And as soon as this forgetfulness is removed, the Vyavasayatmika Buddhi, the Vyavasaya Buddhi, as mentioned here and in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 41, follows at once. This ascertained knowledge of the living being leads to loving service to the Lord, which the living being requires. The kingdom of God is unlimited. Therefore, the number of the assisting hands of the Lord is also unlimited. The Bhagavad Gita asserts that the Lord has his hands, legs, eyes, and mouths in every nook and corner of his creation. This means that the expansions of differentiated parts and parcels, called jivas, or living entities, are assisting hands of the Lord, and all of them are meant for rendering a particular pattern of service to the Lord. The conditioned soul, even in the position of a Brahma, forgets this by the influence of the illusory material energy generated out of false egoism. One can counteract such false egoism by invoking God consciousness. Liberation means getting out of the slumber of forgetfulness and becoming situated in the real loving service of the Lord, as exemplified in the case of Brahma. The service of Brahma is the sample of service in liberation, distinguished from the so-called altruistic services full of mistakes and forgetfulness. Liberation is never inaction, but service without human mistakes. Text 2. The way of presentation of the Vedic sounds is so bewildering that it directs the intelligence of the people to meaningless things, like the heavenly kingdoms. The conditioned souls hover in dreams in such heavenly illusory pleasures, but actually they do not relish any tangible happiness in such places. Purport. The conditioned soul is always engaged in laying out plans for happiness within the material world, even up to the end of the universal limit. He is not even satisfied with he is not even satisfied with available amenities on this planet Earth, where he has exploited the resources of nature to the best of his ability. He wants to go to the moon, or to the planet Venus, to exploit resources there. But the Lord has warned us in the Bhagavad Gita about the worthlessness of all the innumerable planets of this universe, as well as those planets within other systems. There are innumerable universes, and also innumerable planets in each of them, but none of them is immune to the chief miseries of material existence, namely the pangs of birth, the pangs of death, the pangs of old age, and the pangs of disease. The Lord says that even the topmost planet, known as Brahmaloka or Satyaloka, and what to speak of other planets, like the heavenly planets, is not a happy land for residential purposes, due to the presence of material pangs, as above mentioned. Conditioned souls are strictly under the laws of fruitive activities, and as such, they sometimes go up to Brahmaloka and again come down to Pataloka, as if they were unintelligent children on a merry-go-round. The real happiness is in the kingdom of God, where no one has to undergo the pangs of material existence. Therefore, the Vedic ways of fruitive activities for the living entities are misleading. One thinks of a superior way of life in this country, or that, or on this planet, or another, but nowhere in the material world can he fulfill his real desire of life, namely, eternal life, full intelligence, and complete bliss. Indirectly, Srila Shukadeva Goswami affirms that Maharaj Parikshit, in the last stage of life, should not desire to transfer himself to the so-called heavenly planets, but should prepare himself for going back home, back to Godhead. None of the material planets, nor the amenities available there for living conditions, is everlasting. Therefore, one must have a factual reluctance to enjoy such temporary happiness as they afford. Text 3. For this reason, the enlightened person should endeavor only for the minimum necessities of life, while in the world of names. He should be intelligently fixed and never endeavor for unwanted things, being competent to perceive practically all such endeavors are merely hard labor for nothing. Purport. Bhagavata Dharma, or the cult of Srimad-Bhagavatam, is perfectly distinct from the way of fruitive activities, which are considered by the devotees to be merely a waste of time. The whole universe, or for that matter, all material existence, is moving on as Jagat, simply for planning business, to make one's position very comfortable or secure, although everyone sees that this existence is neither comfortable nor secure, and can never become comfortable or secure at any stage of development. Those who are captivated by the illusory advancement of material civilization, following the way of phantasmagoria, are certainly madmen. The whole material creation is a jugglery of names only. In fact, it is nothing but a bewildering creation of matter like earth, water, and fire. The buildings, furniture, cars, bungalows, mills, factories, industries, peace, war, or even the highest perfection of material science, namely atomic energy and electronics, are all simply bewildering names of material elements with their concomitant reactions of the three modes. Since the devotee, this was written a long time ago, this was written in the 60s, and how perceptive Prabhupada was about where electronics was going to go. Since the devotees of the Lord knows them perfectly well, he is not interested in creating unwanted things for a situation which is not at all reality, but simply names of no more significance than the babble of sea waves. The great kings, leaders, and soldiers fight with one another in order to perpetuate their names in history. They are forgotten in the due course of time, and they make place for another era in history. But the devotee realizes how much history and historical persons are useless products of flickering time. The fruitive worker aspires after a big fortune in the matter of wealth, woman, and worldly adoration. But those who are fixed in perfect reality are not at all interested in such false things. For them, it is all a waste of time. Since every second of human life is important, an enlightened man should be very careful to utilize time very cautiously. 1 second of human life wasted in the vain research of planning for happiness in the material world can never be replaced, even if one spends millions of coins of gold. Therefore, the transcendentalist, desiring freedom from the clutches of Maya or the illusory activities of life, is warned herewith not to be captivated by the external features of fruitive actors. Human life is never meant for sense gratification, but for self-realization. Srimad-Bhagavatam instructs us solely on this subject from the very beginning to the end. Human life is simply meant for self-realization. The civilization which aims at this utmost perfection never indulges in creating unwanted things, and such a perfect civilization prepares men only to accept the bare necessities of life, or to follow the principle of the best use of a bad bargain. Our material bodies and our lives in that connection are bad bargains, because the living entity is actually spirit, and spiritual advancement of the living entity is absolutely necessary. Human life is intended for the realization of this important factor, and one should act accordingly, accepting only the bare necessities of life and depending more on God's gifts without diversion of human energy for any other purpose, such as being mad for material enjoyment. The materialistic advancement of civilization is called the civilization of the demons, which ultimately ends in wars and scarcity. The transcendentalist is specifically warned herewith to be fixed in mind, so that even if there is difficulty in plain living and high thinking, he will not budge even an inch from his stark determination. For a transcendentalist, it is a suicidal policy to be intimately in touch with the sense gratifiers of the world, because such a policy will frustrate the ultimate gain of life. Shukadeva Goswami met Maharaj Parikshit when the latter felt a necessity for such a meeting. It is the duty of a transcendentalist to help persons who desire real salvation and to support the cause of salvation. One may note that Shukadeva Goswami never met Maharaj Parikshit while he was ruling as a great king. For a transcendentalist, the mode of activities is explained in the next shloka. Very interesting, because now that Kali Yuga has advanced so much farther than when it was then, Srila Prabhupada and Lord Chaitanya and Srila Prabhupada, following his footsteps, introduced the principle of Yukta Vairagya, of using everything that has been created by these electronic gizmos and gadgets and technology and advancement of science in the service of the Lord. And that way purifying the atmosphere. Text 4. They're passing through. Translation. Text 4. When there are ample earthly flats to lie on, what is the necessity of cots and beds? When one can use his own arms, what is the necessity of a pillow? When one can use the palms of his hands, what is the necessity of varieties of utensils? When there is ample covering, or the skins of trees, what is the necessity of clothing? Purport. The necessities of life for the protection and comfort of the body must not be unnecessarily increased. Human energy is spoiled in a vain search after such illusory happiness. If one is able to lie down on the floor, then why should one endeavor to get a good bedstead or soft cushion to lie on? If one can rest without any pillow or make use of the soft arms endowed by nature, there is no necessity of searching after a pillow. If we make a study of the general life of the animals, we can see that they have no intelligence for building big houses, furniture, and other household paraphernalia, and that they maintain a healthy life by lying down on the open land. They do not know how to cook or prepare foodstuff, yet they still live healthy lives more easily than the human being. This does not mean that human civilization should revert to animal life, or that the human being should live naked in the jungles without any culture, education, and sense of morality. An intelligent human cannot live the life of an animal. Rather, man should try to utilize his intelligence in arts and science, poetry and philosophy. In such a way he can further the progressive march of human civilization. But here the idea given by Srila Shukadeva Goswami is that the reserve energy of human life, which is far superior to that of animals, should simply be utilized for self-realization. Advancement of human civilization must be towards the goal of establishing our lost relationship with God, which is not possible in any form of life other than the human. One must realize the nullity of the material phenomena, considering them a passing phantasmagoria, and must endeavor to make a solution to the miseries of life. Self-complacence with a polished type of animal civilization geared to sense gratification is delusion. And such a civilization is not worthy of the name. Everywhere, Advancement of human civilization must be towards the goal of establishing our lost relationship with God, which is not possible in any form of life other than the human. One must realize the nullity. Anyway, it's very important. We'll read it again. One must realize the nullity of the material phenomena, considering them a passing phantasmagoria, and must endeavor to make a solution to the miseries of life. Self-complacence with a polished type of animal civilization geared to sense gratification is delusion, and such a civilization is not worthy of the name. In pursuit of such false activities, a human being is in the clutches of Maya, or illusion. Great sages and saints in the days of yore were not living in palatial buildings furnished with good furniture and so-called amenities of life. They used to live in huts, in groves, and sit on the flat ground, and yet they have left immense treasures of high knowledge with all perfection. Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Sanatana Goswami were high-ranking ministers of state, but they were able to leave behind them immense writings on transcendental knowledge, while residing only for one night underneath one tree. They did not live even 2 nights under the same tree, and what to speak of well-furnished rooms with modern amenities. And still, they were able to give us most important literatures of self-realization. Now, to put this into perspective, when Srila Prabhupada conceived of the Krishna Balaram Mandir in India and brought his Western devotees who were helping him and did help him to construct it, he made sure that there was better amenities than normal for the Westerners. He didn't expect us to live in the same level of standard of living. And he used to kind of laugh at us. All you Americans, wherever you go, you seem to have the same standard of living no matter where you are, no matter what the conditions are. And he used that in order to keep us healthy and keep us strong and to keep us working hard to spread Krishna consciousness. That's the principle of renunciation, to use everything, but not for our own sense gratification, but for the health of the body and the strength of the body so that we could serve. The so-called, back to the purport, the so-called comforts of life are not actually helpful for progressive civilization. Rather, they are detrimental to such progressive life. In the system of Sanatana Dharma, of 4 divisions of social life and the 4 orders of progressive realization, there are ample opportunities and sufficient directions for a happy termination of the progressive life, and the sincere followers are advised therein to accept a voluntary life of renunciation in order to achieve the desired goal of life. If one is not accustomed to abiding by the life of renunciation and self-abnegation from the beginning, one should try to get into the habit at a later stage of life, as recommended by Srila Sukadeva Goswami, and that will help one to achieve the desired success. Text 5. Are there no torn clothes lying on the Carmen road? Do the trees, which exist for maintaining others, no longer give alms and charity? Do the rivers, being dried up, no longer supply water to the thirsty? Of course, now they're polluted, so to the point where you can't even bathe in them. Are the caves of the mountains now closed? Or above all, does the Almighty Lord not protect the fully surrendered souls? Why then do the learned sages go to flatter those who are intoxicated by hard-earned wealth? Purport. The renounced order of life is never meant for begging or living at the cost of others as a parasite. According to the dictionary, a parasite is a sycophant who lives at the cost of society without making any contribution to that society. The renounced order is meant for contributing something substantial to society and not depending on the earnings of the householders. On the contrary, acceptance of alms from the householders by the bona fide mendicant is an opportunity afforded by the saint for the tangible benefit of the donor. In the Sanatana Dharma institution, almsgiving to the mendicant is part of a householder's duty, and it is advised in the scriptures that the householders should treat the mendicants as their family children and should provide them with food, clothing, and so on, without being asked. Pseudo-mendicants, therefore, should not take advantage of the charitable disposition of the faithful householders. The first duty of a person in the renounced order of life is to contribute some literary work for the benefit of the human being in order to give him realized direction towards self-realization. Amongst the other duties in the renounced order of life of Srila Sanatana, Srila Rupa, and the other Goswamis of Vrindavan, the foremost duty discharged by them was to hold learned discourses amongst themselves. At Sevakunj, Vrindavan, the spot where Sri Radha Damodar temple was established by Srila Jiva Goswami, and where the actual Samadhi tombs of Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Jiva Goswami are laid. For the benefit of all in human society, they left behind them immense literatures of transcendental importance. Similarly, all the acharyas who voluntarily accepted the renounced order of life aimed at benefiting human society and not at living a comfortable or irresponsible life at the cost of others. However, those who cannot give any contribution should not go to the householders for food, for such mendicants asked bread from the householders. For such mendicants asking bread from the householders are an insult to the highest order. Shukadeva Goswami gave this warning especially for those mendicants who adopt this line of profession to solve their economic problems. Such mendicants are in abundance in the age of Kali. Hare Krishna. Haribo. When a man becomes a mendicant willfully or by circumstances, he must be of firm faith and conviction that the Supreme Lord is the maintainer of all living beings everywhere in the universe. Why then would he neglect the maintenance of a surrendered soul who is 100% engaged in the service of the Lord? A common master looks to the necessities of his servant. So how much more would the all-powerful, all-opulent Supreme Lord look after the necessities of life for a fully surrendered soul? The general rule is that a mendicant devotee will accept a simple small loincloth without asking anyone to give it in charity. He simply salvages it from the rejected torn cloth thrown in the street. When he is hungry, he may go to a magnanimous tree which drops fruits, and when he is thirsty, he may drink water from the flowing river. He does not require to live in a comfortable house, but should find a cave in the hills and not be afraid of jungle animals, keeping faith in God who lives in everyone's heart. The Lord may dictate to tigers and other jungle animals not to disturb his devotee. Haridas Thakur, a great devotee of Lord Sri Chaitanya, used to live in such a cave, and by chance a great venomous snake was a co-partner of the cave, his roommate. Some admirer of Thakur Haridas, who had to visit the Thakur every day, feared the snake and suggested that the Thakur leave that place. Because his devotees were afraid of the snake and they were regularly visiting the cave, Thakur Haridas agreed to the proposal on their account. But as soon as this was settled, the snake actually crawled out of its hole in the cave and left the cave for good before everyone present. By the dictation of the Lord, who lived also within the heart of the snake gave preference to Haridas and decided to leave the place and not disturb him. So this is a tangible example of how the Lord gives protection to a bona fide devotee like Thakur Haridas. What to speak of a bona fide devotee like Thakur Haridas? You saw the latest thing that went viral? There was a man in northern part of America, and he was swimming in a river, or had a boat, I don't remember, but there was a mama bear with 3 cubs crossing the river, and they got caught in the current, and they were drowning, all of them. So the mama bear started calling out. So the man jumped in the river and saved the 3 baby bears. Just like you do at a life. So anyway, what happened was the mama bear went over to the man and just put her arms around the man and gave him a huge hug, a real bear hug. And it was all caught on camera. This is not just a story. It was actually caught on camera. Yeah, it happened just the other day. So this is a tangible example of how the Lord gives protection to a bona fide devotee like Thakur Haridas, or a good Samaritan of the first order. Hare Krishna. Okay, back to the purport. According to the regulations of the Sanatana Dharma institution, one is trained from the beginning to depend fully on the protection of the Lord in all circumstances. The path of renunciation is recommended for acceptance by one who is fully accomplished and fully purified in his existence. This stage is described also in the Bhagavad Gita as Daivi Sampat. A human being is required to accumulate Daivi Sampat, or spiritual assets. Otherwise, the next alternative, Asuri Sampat, or material assets, will overcome him disproportionately. And thus one will be forced into the entanglement of different miseries of the material world. A sannyasi should always live alone without company, and he must be fearless. This is why it was such a hard decision for me to make once this happened, to travel with someone. Because I've been traveling alone for 40 years. But this is the life. Hare Krishna. You should never be afraid of living alone, although he is never alone. The Lord is residing in everyone's heart, and unless one is purified by the prescribed process, one will feel that he is alone. But a man in the renounced order of life must be purified by the process. Thus he will feel the presence of the Lord everywhere, and will have nothing to fear, such as being without any company. Everyone can become a fearless and honest person if his very existence is purified by discharging the prescribed duty for each and every order of life. One can become fixed in one's prescribed duty by faithful oral reception of Vedic instructions and assimilation of the essence of Vedic knowledge by devotional service to the Lord. Confirmation of what we're doing right now. Text 6. Thus being fixed, one must render service unto the Supersoul, situated in one's own heart, by his omnipotency. Because he is the almighty personality of Godhead, eternal and unlimited, he is the ultimate goal of life. And by worshipping him, one can end the cause of the conditioned state of existence. Purport. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 1861, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is the all-pervading, omnipresent Supersoul. Therefore, one who is a yogi can worship only him because he is the substance and not illusion. Every living creature is engaging in the service of something else. A living being's constitutional position is to render service. But in the atmosphere of Maya, or illusion, or the conditional state of existence, the conditioned soul seeks the service of illusion. A conditioned soul works in the service of his temporary body, bodily relatives like the wife and children, and the necessary paraphernalia for maintaining the body and bodily relations, such as the house, land, wealth, society, and country. But he does not know that all such renderings of service are totally illusory. As we have discussed many times before, this material world is itself an illusion, like a mirage in the desert. In the desert there is an illusion of water, and the foolish animals become entrapped by such an illusion and run after water in the desert, although there is no water at all. But the lack of water in the desert should not lead one to conclude that there is no water at all. The intelligent person knows well that there is certainly water in the seas and oceans, but such vast reservoirs of water are far, far away from the deserts. One should therefore search for water in the vicinity of seas and oceans and not in the deserts. Every one of us is searching after real happiness in life, namely eternal life, eternal or unlimited knowledge, and unending blissful life. But foolish people who have no knowledge of the substance search after the reality of life in the illusion. This material body does not endure eternally, and everything in relationship with this temporary body, such as the wife, children, society, and country, also changes along with the change of body. This is called samsara, or repetition of birth, death, old age, and disease. We would like to find a solution for all these problems of life, but we do not know the way. Herein it is suggested that anyone who wants to make an end to these miseries of life, namely repetition of birth, death, disease, and old age, must take to this process of worshipping the Supreme Lord and not others, as it is also ultimately suggested in the Bhagavad Gita. And if we at all want to end the cause of our conditioned life, we must take to the worship of Lord Sri Krishna, who is present in everyone's heart by his natural affection for all living beings, who are actually the parts and parcels of the Lord. The baby in the lap of his mother is naturally attached to the mother, and the mother is attached to the child. But when the child grows up and becomes overwhelmed by circumstances, he gradually becomes detached from the mother, although the mother always expects some sort of service from the grown-up child, and is equally affectionate toward her child, even though the child is forgetful. Similarly, because we are all part and parcel of the Lord is always affectionate to us, and he always tries to get us back home, back to Godhead. But we, the conditioned souls, do not care for him and run instead after the illusory bodily connections. We must therefore extricate ourselves from all illusory connections of the world and seek reunion with the Lord, trying to render service unto him because he is the ultimate truth. Actually, we are hankering after him as the child seeks the mother. And to search out the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we need not go anywhere else, because the Lord is within our hearts. This does not suggest, however, that we should not go to the places of worship, namely the temples, churches, and mosques. Such holy places of worship are also occupied by the Lord, because the Lord is omnipresent. For the common man, these holy places are centers of learning about the science of God. When the temples are devoid of activities, the people in general become uninterested in such places, and consequently the mass of people gradually become godless, and a godless civilization is the result. Such a hellish civilization artificially increases the conditions of life, and existence becomes intolerable for everyone. The foolish leaders of a godless civilization try to devise various plans to bring about peace and prosperity in the godless world under a patent trademark of materialism. And because such attempts are illusory only, the people elect incompetent, blind leaders, one after another, who are incapable of offering solutions. If we want at all to end this anomaly of a godless civilization, we must follow the principles of revealed scriptures, like the Srimad-Bhagavatam, and follow the instructions of a person like Sri Shukadeva Goswami, who has no attraction for material gain. Hare Krishna. Text 7. Who else but the gross materialists will neglect such transcendental thought and take to the non-permanent names only, seeing the mass of people fallen in the river of suffering as the consequence of accruing the result of their own work? I'll tell you a little story. When Srila Prabhupada first went to Japan to negotiate a contract to print the Krishna book, there were 4 or 5 devotees with him in Japan, and it was Janmashtami. So Prabhupada had them all come into a room, and he pulled out the Srimad-Bhagavatam in Sanskrit, 10th canto. And he hadn't published the Krishna book yet, so they didn't have any idea what the 10th canto was really. And he says, sit down, and we are going to celebrate Janmashtami by hearing the Srimad-Bhagavatam. And then he started to read in Sanskrit. And after a few minutes, the devotees started getting restless, and one of them even walked out, I think. And Prabhupada said, where are you going? He said, Prabhupada, I can't understand what you're saying. It doesn't make any difference. Sit down and hear. Because you'll be purified by this sound vibration, and you'll become more qualified to be a devotee. So anyway, the message is that the Janmashtami and every day actually, but especially these special days, are meant to be chanting and dancing in the holy name and doing exactly what we're doing, hearing about Krishna, hearing the Srimad-Bhagavatam. We'll read that translation again. Who else but the gross materialists will neglect such transcendental thought and take to the non-permanent names only, seeing the mass of people fallen in the river of suffering as the consequence of accruing the result of their own work? Purport. In the Vedas, it is said that persons who are attached to demigods to the exclusion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are like the animals who follow the herdsman, even though they are taken to the slaughterhouse. The materialists, like animals, also do not know how they are being misdirected by neglecting the transcendental thought of the Supreme Person. No one can remain vacant of thought. It is said that an idle brain is a devil's workshop because a person who cannot think in the right way must think of something which may bring about disaster. The materialists are always worshipping some minor demigods, although this is condemned in the Bhagavad Gita. As long as a person is illusioned by material gains, he petitions the respective demigods to draw some particular benefit, which is, after all, illusory and non-permanent. The enlightened transcendentalist is not captivated by such illusory things. Therefore, he is always absorbed in the transcendental thought of the Supreme in different stages of realization, namely Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. In the previous verse, it is suggested that one should think of the Supersoul, which is one step higher than the impersonal thought of Brahman, as it was suggested in the case of contemplating the Virat Rupa of the Personality of Godhead. Intelligent persons who can see properly may look into the general conditions of the living entities who are wandering in the cycle of the 8,400,000 species of life, as well as in different classes of human beings. It is said that there is an everlasting belt of water called the river Vaitarani at the entrance of the plutonic planet of Yamaraj, who punishes sinners in different manners. After being subjected to such sufferings, a sinner is awarded a particular species of life according to his deeds in the past. Such living entities are Such living entities as are punished by Yamaraj are seen in different varieties of conditioned life. Some of them are in heaven, some of them are in hell, some of them are brahmanas, some of them are misers, but no one is happy in this material world, and all of them are either class A, B, or C prisoners, suffering because of their own deeds. The Lord is impartial to all circumstances of the sufferings of the living entities, but to one who takes shelter of his lotus feet, the Lord gives proper protection, and he takes such a living entity back home, back to himself. Text 8. Others conceive of the personality of Godhead residing within the body, in the region of the heart, and measuring only 8 inches, with 4 hands, carrying a lotus, a wheel of a chariot, a conch shell, and a club, respectively. Purport. The all-pervading personality of Godhead resides as Paramatma in the heart of each and every living entity. The measurement of the localized personality of Godhead is estimated to expand from the ring finger to the end of the thumb, more or less 8 inches. The form of the Lord described in this verse, with distribution of different symbols, beginning from the lower right hand up and down to the lower left hand, with lotus, wheel of a chariot, conch shell, and club respectively, is called Janardana, or the plenary portion of the Lord who controls the general mass. There are many other forms of the Lord, with varied situations of the symbols of lotus, conch shell, etc., and they are differently known as Purushottama, Achyuta, Narasingha, Trivikrama, Rishikesha, Kesava, Madhava, Aniruddha, Pradyumna, Sankarsana, Sridhara, Vasudeva, Damodara, Janardana, Narayana, Hari, Padmanabha, Vamana, Madhusudana, Govinda, Krishna, Vishnumurti, Adhoksaja, and Upendra. These 24 forms of the localized personality of Godhead are worshipped in different parts of the planetary system, and in each system there is an incarnation of the Lord having a different Vaikuntha planet in the spiritual sky, which is called the Paravyoma. There are many other hundreds and scores of different forms of the Lord, and each and every one of them has a particular planet in the spiritual sky, of which this material sky is only a fragmental offshoot. The Lord exists as Purusha, or the male enjoyer, although there is no comparing him to any male form in the material world. But all such forms are Advaita, non-different from one another, and each of them is eternally young. The young Lord with 4 hands, as nicely decorated, is described below. And we'll stop our reading for tonight. Hare Krishna. Now, let us have some reflections, points that stuck out in your mind. Yes, Antonio.
Purport for text 7, toward the end, we speak about, it is said that there is an everlasting belt of water called the river Vaidyaran at the entrance of the Plutonic planet of Yamaraj. The Plutonic planet means with characteristics of the planet Pluto? Or
No, it's a region. Patala is the region, and planets that are in that system are called Platonic, or Platonic. But it's not the same as Pluto. It's a different term. And it's interesting because that word Vaitarani actually means the river that separates the spiritual and the material worlds. And it depends on where you're looking from. From this side, from the material side, it appears to be a river just surrounding it. But if you look from the other side, you'd see that it's an ocean. That's the causal ocean. That's the ocean that Mahavishnu is lying in, and from where he glances at material nature and starts the whole process of material action and reaction, which results in the creation of the material world. So sometimes you hear the term ocean, and sometimes you hear the term river to describe that boundary. And that's only because it looks like one thing from one side and another thing from the other side. Yes, Bhakti John.
I don't want to sound bad. They would, like worshiping Christ or something, would that be considered like worshiping a demigod?
No, it's not the same. He would be considered worship of a pure devotee.
Okay.
Because he's actually a bhakti yogi.
Okay.
But the problem was that the people surrounding him were of a certain character, a certain culture. And it's always been like that. Mideast has always been like that. It's not just now that there's so many wars and fighting and all these things. It's always been like that. It's the nature of the people in that area of the world. Like the different modes of nature, they accumulate both in each individual body, and then we accumulate similar, we are attracted to similar other bodies in the family, and similar in nations and in different parts of the world. Persons who have same basic qualifications, they become attracted together. So because what was needed was teaching of sub-religious principles to bring them up to a standard where they could actually have some faith in God. You know, did he preach the thing he preached? And mainly in parables, indirect examples, not too much detail about. He talked about the Father, he talked about the spiritual world, he talked about the kingdom of God, he talked about different things that gave a hint, you know, but not much detail. So that wouldn't be demigod worship.
Okay.
But in India, there are a class of men who act, and in the Greeks, for instance, the Greeks were demigod worshippers. The Romans were demigod worshippers, you know. And he was, in a sense, he was, well, not in a sense, he was a reformer. He was a religious reformer. He reformed Judaism and the other demigod worshipping cults, you know, and taught that there was one God and it was our Father, he was a person. But he didn't give enough details so that you could define him in a concrete way to kind of end the debate. As Giriraj Maharaj nicely said this morning in his lecture, he said one of the main reason Krishna comes, you know, once in a day of Brahma, is to actually end the speculation and the argument, you know, to show, to manifest the potencies of God as the Supreme Being in the world. And still people can't accept it. What else? What else? Yes, Hannah.
Can you elaborate on this? Sukadeva Goswami met Maharaj Parikshit when the latter felt a necessity for such a meeting.
Well, he was deeply inquisitive, deeply desirous of knowing what he should do now that he knew he was going to leave. So Krishna's in his heart, Krishna's in the heart of Sukadeva Goswami, and he arranged them to come together at exactly the same moment when, or after, all of these different sages that had come from all the universes were giving him different directions and different ideas about what he should do. And they couldn't agree on one thing. And as soon as Sukadeva Goswami came, they all agreed on one thing. They put him on the seat and they listened to him. So read the sentence again. momentary glitch?
It's live now.
Huh?
It's live now.
Okay. Was it very long?
No, just a few seconds.
Seconds. Okay. Okay, what else? Yes, sir.
The 24 forms of the Supreme Lord having different configurations of function.
Yeah.
So are there different forms of super soul, or what are their functions?
Their functions are to dominate or predominate or be the predominating deities of the different parts of Vaikuntha. They're not the super soul, but the super soul is an expansion of Garbhodakshai Vishnu within each universe, who is also four-handed. Same. I mean, the fact of the matter is that it's very organized. The universe is extremely organized. And that's why when they go deeper and deeper into atomic, what they think is atom, it's actually subatomic. It's not the atom, but it's a construct of atoms. And they're going deeper and deeper into it. And every time they go to another level, it's organized. So everything is organized. And that's the way the Vaikuntha planets are organized. That the personality, the expansions of God who are in the different parts of the Vaikuntha are there with different configurations so you can tell them apart. And each one of them has a little different mood, and personalities with that mood are attracted to that form, and they want to go to that place in the spiritual world, and they go there. It's all directed by the Super Soul. I think was it Giriraj Maharaj said this morning that, when Krishna appears to leave Vrindavan, he leaves in a form that looks just like his, but a little different mood. Just like a man may have, a family, and then he may have his occupation as a high court judge or whatever, a businessman or whatever. And each one of those places, he has a different mood. He acts differently due to the nature of that place. So variety, it's a matter of, as we say, variety is the mother of invention. Variety is the spice of life. So that's coming from Krishna, that's because that's the way he is, that's his nature. He wants variety. He doesn't need it because he's self-sufficient, but he wants it. And therefore we have a need also for variety because we're part of him. Like Radharani is his internal pleasure-giving potency, and she expands, her moods expand in forms. So she pleases him in unlimited ways, in different moods, in different ways. Don't you wish if you were a wife to a husband, you expand yourself in 10 different forms and different moods and see that your husband's always, docile and happy and controlled? So everything that's going on here is going on originally in the spiritual world, but there in the reality and here, like it said in the purport, like a mirage, like a reflection. So that the sun, strikes the sand and makes it hot, and that hot heat makes it a phenomenon that looks like water. So the material nature is like that. It looks like the reality, but it's not the reality. It's not that it's not real, it's real, but it's temporary. Like it said in the purport, water is real. It's not that there's no water. There is water, but it's somewhere else. Who was it that told this funny story? It was either Prabhupada or Riddhananda Maharaj in a class. He was telling the story about a man who had a very important appointment, and he lost his keys, the keys to his car. So he was down on the ground looking, searching desperately, because he had to get to his appointment. And his friend came along and asked what he was doing. He said, I just lost the keys to my car and I got to have this appointment, otherwise I'm going to lose my job. My life's going to fall apart. He said, can I help? Yeah, please, help. He said, where do you remember last time seeing you? Where do you remember? About 600 yards that way. And he said, well, what are you searching here for? Oh, there's a street light here and there wasn't any light down there. It's exactly what we're doing. We're looking for happiness in the wrong place. As soon as we contact Krishna, actually contact Krishna, in any of his manifestations, his deity form, the Bhagavatam, other devotees, especially self-realized devotees, etc., Krishna Prasadam, then we immediately become happy. We immediately become. So if we can keep absorbed like this, then we can be happy all the time. We don't have to suffer if you don't want to. What time is it? Okay, we'll take a break now. Thank you very much. All glories to Sri Krishna Janmastami. All glories to the teachings of Krishna in the Srimad-Bhagavatam. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bo.